It's Waxing Lyrical, baby.
Hello, Waxers, and welcome to Waxing Lyrical Mains and Dutch. I'm your host, Mains, my colleague. You forgot to look at the weather report this morning. It's Mr. Neil Dutton. How are we, Neil?
Warm.
Neil Dutton, our boy, the Dut Bomb.
Is wearing a shirt and a jumper.
A black jumper, no less.
You know, I know the north doesn't get hot, Dutton, but it obviously has done this week. Because it's hot in the south, and I rang my parents and they said it was hot. And you're in a jumper and shirt. Are you just a rebel or stupid?
Why can't I be both?
It's a very good question, Dutton. Very good question.
With verified status comes great responsibility.
Yeah, I was going to say hashtag BBB2. That's Billy Big Balls. Number 2 for Dutton has been verified blue tick on the Twitter. Not sure how. Not sure I want to know. Don't want to know what he had to do to get that. We just know it's happened, and we're very proud of him.
Many things. Many things.
No one wants to talk about that, Dutton. We are returning a favour this week. We have my fiance's upstairs. We're going on a stag do to Dusseldorf. The ghost. I'm going to whisper this. The gorgeous Liz Loza on the phone later to talk all things fantasy football and all things her beloved Chicago Bears.
Indeed.
For those who aren't aware, Dutton was on Liz's X's and Y's podcast earlier in the week. Please give it a listen. We both retweeted it numerous times. Find it on our timelines. And Dutton talks all things. What did you talk, Dutton, on Liz's show?
I talked about how my favourite dynasty buy this year is Kenny Golladay, as I don't think that'll surprise anyone. The dynasty player I want rid of is Des Bryant, and just what I would do with Todd Gurley when it's my turn to draft him.
I like it, Dutton, I like it. We've also got a couple of classic weird worlds. But before we get on to that, obviously me and Dutton are from Liverpool. You know the accent. And there was terrible scenes and news from our big neighbours in the North Manchester this week. Terrible story, terrible news. As we've discussed before, no one should ever go out and not come home. That's not how the world should work. And we just send our thoughts and love out to anybody who's been affected by that situation. You know, there's been many notions of thanks and love and respect, and there's places where you can give money, and I would suggest to do all of those things, because it's one of those things that could happen to anyone, and you wish it happens to no one.
Yeah, I agree. It was a horrifying moment. I mean, all incidents of this type are reprehensible. They don't really bear thinking about, but I think it was the closeness and also the demographic of those being targeted that made it all the more heartbreaking. So we say thoughts, best wishes, and all the love to those who are affected. But they will not win. Exactly,
Dutton. Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. And on that note, let's move on back to stupidity, and get on with Weird World. And I suppose my first question on the Weird World, Dutton, is have you got a thermos flask?
I have some of those travel mugs, but I don't actually own a thermos flask.
So in it, well, let's use a travel mug as an example. What do you put in your what's your drink of choice or liquid of choice in a thermos flask?
Tea.
What if I said a woman in Florida? You'll be surprised to hear. Thought that it would be a good place for dry ice and semen.
Okay.
A Florida woman trying to get pregnant via artificial insemination called police because she feared the thermos flask she was using to store sperm and dry ice might explode. Felicia Nevins sought the Pasco County Sheriff's Office help after she forgot to remove the rubber O-ring from the container. So there's a multitude of different things here, Dutton. Where have you got the semen from?
That was my first question.
Where have you got the dry ice from? How are you thinking of artificially inseminating yourself?
Drinking it.
And where's What's the script with a thermos flask like?
Yeah, I mean, in my head, I'm going to assume it was probably some kind of nondescript metallic grey thing, but I can't get the thought in my head that it was a tartan thermos with a little plastic detachable cup at the top, and that's the type that the stereotypical fisherman would have. But I doubt that they'd be sitting there, on the Tweed trying to land salmon whilst drinking ice and spunk.
The question I've got to ask is, did the spunk go direct into the thermos flask, or was it transported from one place to another? These are questions.
By a donor.
This is what I'm saying, right? These are questions that need to be answered. Is there a guy literally whacking off into a thermos mug, or is he whacking off into something else, someone else, and then it goes into a thermos flask? Dutton right now is trying to see if he can whack into a cup. He's grabbed a cup to see if it's feasible.
It was a weights and measures calculation. As we know, it's not exact science. I find it hard to believe that anyone can be Drew Brees in terms of accuracy with that kind of shot. So yeah, this is disturbing.
It's disturbing on many levels. What's hilarious about the story is it continues as Miss Nevins got really, really annoyed, and she got really, really annoyed as the Sheriff's Department posted the official story on Facebook. Nevins told the Tampa Bay Times she was upset because the post was not removed. Nevins was not identified by name, but she was mortified that enough information was posted for her to be identified. What's known about her that if you put some information on, that everyone's going to know. Do you know what? That's Felicia. You know why? I've seen her carrying that flask around, going into toilets a lot.
Yeah, I've seen that Mean Girls flask.
It's basically Florida Day here in Weird World, because I've got a second.
Well, it is warm.
I've got a classic. I've got another classic, and the question you've had is, you ever had one of them teachers who marked you down and you were like, no, I know what I should be graded?
Most of them.
What did you usually do about that, Dutton?
Passive-aggressive comments. Under the breath sarcasm.
Exactly. Well, a 22-year-old student is accused of sneaking into a building and illegally logging into Florida University's grading system to change his failing grade to a B. Sammy turned himself in at the Orange County Jail in Orlando on Wednesday and now faces felony charge for accessing a computer without authorization. His father declined to talk to the Orlando Sentinel, saying that the charge is an allegation. The University of Central Florida Professor Chung Young Chan became suspicious when he got a confirmation from a program he used to log grades on May the 4th. He checked the grades and saw Sammy suddenly has a B instead of an F in his Electronics 1 class.
I mean, clearly that's a teacher who knows damn well what he's given every single one of his students and knows that this kid isn't getting a B. But you think, with the ingenuity it was obviously required to break in and log on, maybe he should get some extra credit. I'm not saying he should go all the way up to a B, but surely a C+, a C- or something.
I know it's not computer science, but he's doing electronics here, and the guy's basically broken into a school, broken into a computer department, broken into a computer, and then hacked in to get a B. Why is he failing this course? He's got the necessary skills to as you said, a minimum C+.
You would think.
I love the idea of F you, Mr. Chan. I'm going in and I'm going to change you. But you know what? I'm not going to change you to a C. I'm going to change it to a B to give you the double finger. But what I especially like is Chan's you know what? Every time someone changes a grade, I want a notification on my iPhone. But don't you do all the grading, Mr. Chan? So does that mean every time you do a grade, you get an F and notification on your phone? Are you trying to pretend you're popular or something? I
think he would. He sounds like one of those teachers who, probably always volunteers for break duty because he hasn't got any friends.
Yeah, he does sound like a Class A loser,
Yeah. I love the way that basically we have zero sympathy with law and order on this, but applaud the criminal enterprise of a dunce.
He's also 22 as well. Shouldn't he have finished uni by now?
You'd think.
Yeah, I'm saying no wonder he's got an F. Do you know what I mean? I don't think he's quite got a full deck.
You've got to applaud the fact that he didn't think I'm going to put an A because no one will believe I've got an A, but they might think I've scraped a B somehow. That took planning as well.
Yeah, his fatal flaw is he didn't know that his teacher was a loser who got a notification every time someone changed a grade.
I mean, obviously on a computer it's different, but if you draw an F, it turns into a B awfully easily.
So I read this headline up and right, and it literally just said, "Florida the students accused of changing grade from F to B." And I went, "Oh, cool, he's just got a pen and drew it." And then I read the story, I'm like, no, even better than that. He's a flipping criminal mastermind.
Yeah, it's like an episode of Midsummer Murders without the murder.
That's a place you'd never go and live, isn't it?
The houses are awesome, but the house prices must be through the floor.
You're not getting insurance. You're not getting life insurance in Midsummer, are you?
No.
Plain and simple. You know, like, where are you moving? Midsummer. We're next to.
So, yeah.
Next to Detective blah blah. Yeah, got good news and bad news. Good news is it's good to have them close. Bad news, we ain't insuring you because there's a high chance in the next 4 seasons you're going to be dead.
Yeah, and Barnaby will be solving it, not saving you.
I love the way Dutton knew. I didn't know what his name was. I was going to call him Bergerac.
It ceased to be him about 3 seasons ago. It's now Neil Dudgeon.
I don't even know who that is. Who's he?
You'd know him if you saw him.
Okay, this is becoming visual, and this is a podcast. If you've got any weird world stories, you know where to send them. I'm at Mainsy7. Dutton is at ndutton13, and combined we are at waxing_lyrical. As always discussed, bad grammar and spelling will be down to me.
Yeah. Or send us your links to your favourite episodes of Midsummer Murders. It's the quiet season, we haven't got an awful lot to talk about. We could maybe spend an episode talking about Midsummer Murders.
That could be tough. I'd have to, if someone sends me them, I'm going to have to watch them because I have never watched more than, I'd say, 15 minutes.
I have got DVDs of John Nettles' favourite episodes. I'd be happy to let you watch. I'll bring them to Dusseldorf. I'm sure we'll find a DVD player.
Bring them to Dusseldorf, right? And we'll watch them while not boozing. While I'm dressed in a miniskirt and high heels or whatever Esposti's got planned for me.
Yeah, we'll do that.
On that sour note of us drinking booze while watching Midsummer Murders, let's get the absolutely brilliant Liz Loza on the line to discuss her Chicago Bears and a bit of fancy talk as well. And joining us now on Waxing Lyrical with Mains and Duts, it's the brilliant Liz Loza, fancy football analyst for Yahoo, co-host of the X's and Y's podcast, and someone who was so nice, she allowed little old Dutton on her podcast earlier in the week. Liz, how are we?
I'm well, Paul. Thank you for that glowing introduction.
Well, anyone who's foolish enough to speak to Dutton for more than 10 minutes and once a week, like I have to, is a lovely person in our book. Isn't that right, Neil?
Oh, yes.
He did quite well on the show. He made a lot of very salient points, and apparently we're going to have a wager about Des Bryant coming up.
Oh, Dutton went full NFC East, Eagles, Cowboys hate, I assume. Just, you can't leave it alone.
Partially. My questions were leading, so it's not entirely his fault.
Oh well, we'll see. So there's if we go leading questions, people be aware that you're a Chicago Bears fan. And I guess the question we've got, because we haven't had you on since let's just say it happened in inverted commas. What was
is the question why am I a Chicago Bears fan?
No. But not after that. Is more a case of you're watching the draft. You hear that the Bears have traded up. What's the initial reaction, and then what's the reaction when you hear that the name is Mitchell Trubisky and not Mitch, obviously?
Well, I was curious as to why they were moving up and thinking. I should also say that I was working the Yahoo draft show. And so my colleagues, Dalton Deldon, Andy Behrens, and Scott Pianowski, we were all in the green room before our own show was to begin. And I was doing some hits for the Thursday night show. So we were all gathered together. No, actually, I was on set doing a segment, preparing for a segment live to the Thursday show. So I was watching it, but also hearing the guys in the green room. And Andy is a very big Bears fan as well. He lives in Chicago still. I have since moved to Los Angeles. But as it was going on, I'm by myself, forgetting that the cameras are on me and thinking, what are you doing? We're trading up. What is San Francisco? No, we can't. It's going to be a quarterback? It can't be a quarterback. And then when they said Mitch Trubisky, I thought I yelled. And then also heard Andy yelling in the adjacent room, and then heard a bunch of laughter because my performance, if you will, had been recorded for all of the production crew to also witness. So here's my thought. Ryan Pace, and this has been my objection with Ryan Pace since he was installed as the new GM, loves to make a splash. Most notably, he did it, in my opinion, with the Kevin White selection in the first round, I believe the 6th or 7th pick 2 years ago when Chicago was hosting the draft in their first year of hosting it. He likes to get the attention, get the groundswell, make this giant production, and that's great, except it doesn't always work out. Kevin White now, apparently, his leg is no longer working, right? Like, it's a, quote, mystery as to what's wrong with this leg, but he hasn't been able to get healthy for 2 years. He's played 4 games in two years. And Mitch Trubisky, I've heard the argument that, well, if this is the guy, then that is what you go out and do. You have to have a franchise quarterback if you're going to succeed. So if they believe truly that this is the guy, then you move up for him. That's fine. I just don't think we needed to pay a king's ransom to get a kid who's only been a starter 1 year in college, though his affinity for, quote, kissing titties is well noted, and I'm sure the ladies of Chicago are thrilled by. So, I think it's another boneheaded Ryan Pace trying to make a splash move. I think you could have waited much longer for value, which is interesting because I feel if you look at the Bears roster, it is a mix of Kevin White and Mitchell Trubisky, explosions in the sky, mixed with every single washed up vet that no other team wanted now today, including Victor Cruz, who they've signed to a 1-year deal. So we've got Victor Cruz, Mark Sanchez, Ruben Randall's on the squad, Marcus Wheaton on the squad. There are a lot of young up-and-comers, but they're not coming up. And instead, these rookies who have been banished from their current teams these veterans who've been banished from their current teams are just taking up space.
See, Dalton, this is why you have people like Liz on who support Chicago, or you get like Mark Sester, Cleveland Browns fan. You have me, Washington fan, rather than like get a bog standard Patriots fan who tells you that the world's great, because the world isn't great, Neil. The world is full of people who make silly mistakes and anger vast part of America. There's not, like, as Liz, I can imagine Liz's reaction to that deal, as I've seen the internet and all those clips up piled together of Chicago fans, like literally swearing, throwing stuff, going absolutely mental at this situation. I guess on that thing, my thing is, everyone was like, my thing I find quite funny about it, not funny, is that like when John Lynch was hired as the San Francisco GM, everyone thought, why is everyone getting John Lynch? He doesn't know anything. He's just some guy who's in the studio analyst. Is he any good? And it seems like he's managed to trick Pace into thinking that he was going to pick a quarterback when there's absolutely no way he was ever going to.
Well, I mean, and that's the thing, right? I don't mind us if they had picked Mitch Trubisky at the 3rd spot where we were set to draft. I would have feelings about that. But to move up, why are you moving up, Ryan Pace? Like, I just don't understand what we gave up for him. I hope he develops. I'm not entirely sure he will. But hey, if he doesn't, we've got the dynamic duo of Mark Sanchez and Connor Shaw behind him. So I also think that, like, I mean, this is just a personal note, but you have Mike Glennon at Soldier Field Live, this new guy that you've signed and you're blowing up all over your Instagram account. This is the new Chicago. Like, we're so excited about this guy. This poor guy has barely even, like, had a sip of his beer or bitten his ketchup-less hot dog, and the pick is announced. I mean, if anything, you have now endeared me against my own will and intelligence to root for Mike Glennon in that one move.
I mean, as you say,
Idiot.
Glennon was at Soldier Field. He was at the draft party. I mean, if you'd been sat next to Mike Glennon, as he's sitting there, as you say, he's got his beer, he's just about to eat the hot dog, and he sees the words, and here's the name, Mitchell Trubisky. What do you say to him? I mean, do you say, hey, don't worry, it's a challenge, it's something to be overcome, or do you do what I do and point and laugh at him?
I mean, I'm not going to point and laugh at him because I'm not a dark-hearted person, Neil. But I mean, I think I do the, like, sorry, dude, hope you didn't get comfortable, hope you're renting.
Yeah, it's like I would get Cubs. I'd be like, Mike, maybe get Cubs season tickets. As you said, I wouldn't buy. I'd probably rent. Yeah, catch all the sites you can in Chicago because, you know, January 5th is a high possibility you're looking for a new job.
Or not. I mean, so I feel like this is, for as a fan's perspective, there are no good case scenarios here, right? Because no positives. Because either Glennon is better, and we've seen his ceiling, than Trubisky and keeps his job, which means we've basically, you know, lit a suitcase of potential and picks on fire for nothing. Or we've just had this guy in for a year. It's another, I don't know, 5-9 season. Wait, do the math on that for me. I'm not 5-11 season. And this kid's, like, still not ready to start. And that's part of it too, right? Because, like, if you need a vet a la Josh McCown to teach the younger, to usher him onto the field, Mitch Trubisky is learning behind Mike Glennon and Mark Sanchez. That's not a team that I'm teaching my impression young quarterback who, again, has only started 1 year in college.
It's a bit like getting, you know, Formula One racing car, and, you know, it's just getting a Formula One racing driver and saying, okay, we're going to teach you how to drive this Formula One car, but you're going to be driving a mini Metro. It's not the best way to learn how to do the job that you'll get well paid for, but ultimately, if you can't do it well, you're going to get hurt.
Yeah, and I will say, from a fantasy perspective, the thing I will keep an eye on is that I'm interested to see which receivers spend the most time with Trubisky, and this is probably more of a dynasty interest. Which receivers are spending more time with reps in Trubisky, like who he's passing to more frequently, the second team wide receivers, because we have a bevy of receivers currently on the roster. Now, they're not all guaranteed to make the final team, right? But I want to see who, like, to me, a kid like Adam Shaheen, who we also drafted at the tight end position, is particularly interesting because I have to imagine Trubisky and Shaheen are going to find reps, and we all know that historically young quarterbacks tend to look for their big tight end, as their large-sized targets in the red area of the field. And Shaheen is a huge specimen. I think he's like 6'6", 278 pounds. So from a dynasty perspective, if Trubisky were to see the field, I feel like he and Shaheen might have a good shot at chemistry. Now, I know I'm making a ton of leaps here, but you're asking me to find some silver lining, and this is not even silver lining. It's like pewter lining. And so tin lining, aluminum lining. And I think, though, that combination might be interesting, and I might be a little higher on Shaheen as a potential sleeper in Dynasty than anybody else on the roster currently.
So I guess what we're saying is it's not going to go well. We're looking 5-11. Do based on that and the fact that, you know, John Fox isn't exactly a quarterback whisperer, do we assume that this is the end of John Fox? And in that situation, does that mean Pace also goes?
I think Pace will stick around longer than Fox. Fox was brought in in my opinion, to do what he does, and that's very boringly bring a team to the playoffs, but not be able to get them over the hump to win any sort of final postseason awards. But he hasn't even been able to do that. I think Ryan is a charismatic, young enough guy that he can charm his way into keeping his job beyond John Fox's years. The fact that news came out shortly after the draft that John Fox had no idea that Mitchell Trubisky was even being drafted or that the Bears were trading up, to me, shows obvious tensions running through that front office and the organization in general. So I feel like, this is what Pace does. He's going to make a bold statement move, which is antithetical to the way that John Fox schemes he doesn't scheme offenses, he just schemes defenses. But it's antithetical to the way John Fox thinks, a really much more pragmatic thinker. And so I think that Fox will go this year. Pace will probably stick around for another year or two, depending on which head coach is brought in to replace Fox.
If we move on to, you mentioned Kevin White, or hopping along on one leg. Is it, I'm sure people in Dynasty picked him up. Probably do we just give up? Is this akin to my dad saying to me every year, "Don't worry, Paul. This year we'll build a go-kart, and it'll be awesome, and we'll love it forever." But it just never happened, and I just have to accept that Dad was too busy playing golf to build me a kart.
There's a couch available for those issues, I'm sure. As far as Kevin White is concerned, I feel like now is not the time. I do think that Kevin White will get on the field. So the hope would be, depending on the trade structure of your league, maybe he does something week 2, week 3, right? He splashes. We know that he is a large specimen, incredibly raw, can't run a route. Questions about his explosiveness now with his leg, as you very aptly stated, with only one working leg. So I feel like, though, the tide is so down, you're not going to get anything for him right now. So I would actually wait until first 5 games, 3 games season to see if he does anything. You just need one big play, and the hype machine will start to say, "Oh my goodness, he's the bounce back candidate of the season," blah blah blah. Because I don't think, even if he does tank out, you're going to get much more for him then than you would now. I would be a little bit more hopeful.
I've got a Kevin White version 2 candidate in Josh Doxson. You're like, "Oh, let's go big splash, let's get a wide receiver." I'm scared he's not going to play, Liz. I'm scared
that you can't be. I feel like Kevin White and Josh Doxson are 2 very, very separate situations. Josh Doxson does not have the same recur. He was a rookie last year. This is 2 years that Kevin White hasn't been able to see the field. So if Josh Doxson has he's coming off of Achilles, right? So if he isn't able to perform this season, then you have something. But I actually am high on Josh Doxson this season. And I think that he was young enough, though that injury is one to come back from. Steve Smith did it at a much more advanced age. But if Josh Doxson is able to get on the field, and also the thing about Josh Doxson we have to remember is that his biggest selling point is his vertical burst. So while an Achilles certainly affects that, I feel like his burst was so good that it can be minimally effective, and he can still be wildly effective. So Josh Doxson is not the carbon copy I would post of Kevin White. But I do think it's entirely possible that Kevin White does something in the first 4 games, and then would be the time to move him, because I don't think that he has the shelf life that we once hoped he would.
Last year, the shining beacon of the Chicago Bears offense, I guess, especially from a fantasy point of view, is Jordan Howard. Do we expect similar production this year, or because basically everyone's going to go, this is the guy, everything's going to go through him, should we be buyer beware on Jordan Howard this year?
So I would like to, I'm going to toot my own horn here. I wrote an article last May outlining why Jordan Howard would end the season as the Bears' #1 running back and would blow out Jeremy Langford. So that much predicted. I owned many, many shares of Jordan Howard. I'm not in on him this year, mostly because he is wildly expensive. He is ranked in nearly everybody's top 5 at the running back position, and this makes sense on paper, right? You've got John Fox, who is likes to run the ball quite frequently. He's also not too much of a committee back philosophy, right? Like, he talks about hot hands, but really he prefers to have a workhorse. And Jordan Howard performed incredibly well last season. So why wouldn't you have him in the top 5? Here's why. The kid, if you watch his running style, has no fear of contact. He got hit so much in college. And I feel like he was also a rookie last year, right? So he's excited. He wants to steal the job. I'm not sure, and this is one of those nebulous things that we don't know, if he knows how to protect himself yet, if he knows how to stay healthy. And so I am worried that he will very easily break down, and then you will bust him, because I don't know if in his sophomore campaign, given his running style, he can maintain the same number of touches, despite the fact, let's also take into consideration that as much as John Fox likes to run the ball, other defensive coordinators know this. They also know that the Bears aren't going to put the ball confidently in Mike Glennon or Mitchell Trubisky or Mark Sanchez's or Connor Shore's hands. So, and the receiving core has a ton of question marks around it. So defenses are going to stack a box against Jordan Howard. So I am a little bit worried, and I have him ranked in my top 5, but I'm certainly not taking him ahead of somebody like, I'd rather, frankly, on my own team, rather have someone like Jay Ajayi than Jordan Howard, despite the fact that I've ranked Ajayi behind Howard.
Makes sense. So before we go, what's on the horizon for Liz Loza in the next few weeks on the website and on the podcasts?
Oh, sure. Well, the pod, Neil, as you mentioned, was nice enough to come on the X's and Y's podcast. We'll probably do another one of those. It's, myself and John Evans. We'll probably do another one of those the second week of June as OTAs start to ramp up. And this entire off season from, let's see, Brad Evans and I started this series called Pressing Questions or 3-point stances, where we take every single team and answer 3 pressing questions about them from a fantasy perspective. On Friday, which is tomorrow, I don't know when you're getting this up, but it's currently Thursday. So on Friday, we'll be debuting our Los Angeles Chargers piece, where we discuss Melvin Gordon, Tyrell Williams, Keenan Allen. And so that series posts every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday until we get all 32 teams done. We started it at the top of May, and it should end about, the end of July. So check every week. We have a new team. Monday, I think it's the Broncos, and we go conference by conference, and that's been quite fun to do. I'm also writing an article for the Football Diehards magazine, which will be sold at newsstands throughout the United States. So I'm not sure if your listeners are live in the United States, or if they're did we ever talk about, by the way, the boyfriend I had in Maccelsfield? Did we ever talk about this on the air? No,
you mentioned that you'd lived here. You didn't say you had a boyfriend from Maccelsfield, no?
Oh, yeah.
You were in London, though, right? You weren't in Macclesfield.
Well, so here's the thing. I'm sorry, I was distracted. I was living in London, and then I fell in love with a boy who lived in Macclesfield. He came down to London to party one weekend, and we met at this incredible, awful club called the Long Island Iced Tea, or something like that. It's called Long Island Iced Tea. It was in Leicester Square. I was a much younger woman then, and made some interesting decisions. And we fell in love, and at the end, when my flat was up, the time on my flat was up, I moved to his house in Macclesfield, and he was my first hot love.
So let me get this straight. You're from Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
You lived in London. Mm-hmm. You now live in Los Angeles. And
Mm-hmm.
for a period of time, you lived in effing Macclesfield, one of the most god-awful places of the north.
Yeah. We would go to this pub in Poynton.
Yeah, Poynton. Yeah. Oh my god.
Yeah, we'd go to this pub there and dance to awful club music and eat disgusting food, just awful like curries and potatoes with tuna fish in them because we didn't have any money. And yeah, he worked at AstraZeneca and would come home for lunch. And when I kissed him, he tasted like Advil.
Oh, tell you what, we all lived peculiar lives as young adults. But Liz, I think you've lived the lives of many of us. Like me and Dutton have Dutton has barely left the northwest. I don't even think he probably hasn't gone past Maccelsfield, which is south of Liverpool. Like we are heading to Dusseldorf in Germany, flying out Saturday morning for a stag do. 14 of us, my stag do actually. So
congratulations.
Thank you. So unfortunately, if you see the Twitter feed, everyone, that is me. I have probably got some kind of female attire on. Yeah, it wasn't my idea, and yeah, I'm drunk. And I think that's how the weekend's going to go, Liz. So it's going to be one of those events, unfortunately for me.
Well, if you stop by Maccelsfield, have a walk through the Tesco.
I'll do
because it was a really fantastic Tesco. Lots of meat and 2 veg in that Tesco.
That sounds like it. Well, Liz, as always, a privilege and an honour, and we will speak to you again soon. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. I just want to end Adam Shaheen, sleeper tight end for Dynasty purposes. Keep an eye on him. I think that's probably the biggest fantasy nugget we've delivered in my segment.
Cheers, Liz. Well done. That was a spectacular Liz Loza, or Macclesfield's favourite daughter, Liz Loza, as she will now be known. As I said to her on the line, Dutton, Chicago to London, now lives in Los Angeles, but once used to love walking through the Tesco in Macclesfield.
Well, who wouldn't? I mean, I've not been to the Macclesfield Tesco's, but I can imagine it being quite the social gathering spot.
What the actual F, I think, is the only way I can describe that. Who the juice lives in Macclesfield? But anyway, I don't even think people in Macclesfield want to live in Macclesfield. Brilliant as always. Loves Adam Shaheen. Not as high on Jordan Howard. And I think mainly due to being busy and having a 5-month-old. Tremendously angry about the Chicago Bears.
Oh yeah, that was a very good rant. I think we wound her up, we let her go. That was brilliant.
They're the ones you pray for, Dutton. You don't want the monosyllabic answers, and Liz doesn't give them, which is great. So Dutton, before we close the show and head off on big planes to Dusseldorf, any final thoughts?
Obviously, for reasons best known to yourself, you won't be available next week.
Yeah, I'm Aldi, not in Dusseldorf, but in Italy.
I will have 2 interviews next week, but I will hold them over until the week after, when we shall be happily reunited.
Fantastic, Dalton, fantastic. Yeah, so we're off to pack our cases, pack our sandals and our Germany football tops as we venture as uncouth English yobbos into the European night.
That's us.
Top guys out.